A ballistic missile carrying a 220-pound warhead struck central Tel Aviv in the early hours of March 19th. The impact was recorded, the debris was photographed, the crater was measured, and then the Israeli government sealed the entire block and refused to confirm what kind of weapon it was. Most people think ballistic missiles are designed to destroy military installations or air bases. In reality, this one was aimed at the commercial and residential heart of Israel's second-largest city. The missile covered more than 1,000 kilometers in under 12 minutes. It evaded 3 separate layers of air defense, and it detonated less than 400 meters from a packed emergency shelter. Here is what nobody is saying out loud. This was not a stray round. This was not debris from an interceptor. This was a deliberate strike on a densely populated urban zone, using a weapon system that was supposed to be neutralized years ago. In the next couple of minutes, I will show you what really happened, how the missile got through, and why the details are being buried faster than the wreckage. Quick, before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I appreciate you watching. Please make sure you are subscribed and like the video so more people get to see this. Now let us get to it. Tel Aviv has not been a primary target zone for ballistic missiles since the early 2000s. The city sits behind multiple overlapping air defense grids. Iron Dome handles short-range threats. David's Sling covers medium-range missiles. Arrow 3 intercepts ballistic threats in the upper atmosphere before re-entry. The architecture is layered specifically to prevent what happened on March 19th. For nearly 2 decades, that system worked. Rockets launched from Gaza were intercepted at rates above 90%. Medium-range missiles fired from Lebanon were destroyed mid-flight. Long-range ballistic threats from Syria and Iran were tracked and eliminated in their boost phase or during re-entry. The assumption was clear. Tel Aviv was untouchable. That assumption died at 0347 local time when a single ballistic missile punched through every layer and struck Rothschild Boulevard in the center of the city. The missile was a Fateh 110 variant, an Iranian-designed short-range ballistic missile with a range of 300 kilometers and a payload capacity of between 200 and 500 kilograms. This particular variant carried a 220-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead. It was launched from southern Lebanon. Flight time was 11 minutes and 40 seconds. No interception occurred at any stage. Here's where the contradictions start stacking up. Israeli Defense Forces confirmed a missile strike, but refused to classify the weapon. The Health Ministry reported 14 injuries, none fatal, but would not confirm whether those injuries were from the blast itself or from the stampede into shelters. The Tel Aviv municipality sealed off a 6-block radius around the impact site within 90 minutes. Satellite imagery providers were contacted and asked to delay publication of updated images over central Tel Aviv for 72 hours. Google Maps still shows pre-strike imagery over Rothschild Boulevard as of today. The crater was filled and paved over within 36 hours. Debris was removed by military engineers, not civilian contractors, and no official impact assessment has been published. Most people think governments withhold information to prevent panic. In reality, they withhold information when the facts contradict the narrative they have been selling for years. The narrative here is simple. Israel's air defense system is the most advanced in the world, and Tel Aviv is protected. The fact is equally simple. A 220-pound warhead traveling at Mach 5 evaded detection, avoided interception, and detonated in the middle of the financial district. Now let me show you how that is possible. The Fateh 110 is not a crude, unguided rocket. It is a single-stage, solid-fuel ballistic missile with inertial navigation and terminal guidance. It flies a depressed trajectory, staying low enough to complicate radar tracking while maintaining enough speed to limit reaction time. Launch detection relies on satellite infrared sensors, identifying the heat signature during boost phase. That system works when the missile is launched from open terrain. It fails when the missile is launched from a concealed position under dense foliage or from within an urban structure. Intelligence assessments published after the strike suggest the launch site was a reinforced bunker built into a hillside south of Tyre. The missile was fired from a vertical launch tube designed to minimize thermal bloom. By the time Israeli early warning systems registered the launch, the missile was already in mid-flight. Iron Dome never engaged. The system is optimized for slower-moving rockets with predictable ballistic arcs. A Fateh 110, traveling at over 1,500 meters per second, is outside Iron Dome's engagement envelope. David's sling should have intercepted. It did not. Arrow 3 never had a chance. The missile stayed below the altitude threshold that would trigger an arrow engagement. That leaves one question. If all three systems failed, what was supposed to stop it? The answer is pre-launch interdiction. For years, Israeli doctrine relied on destroying missile stockpiles before they could be used. Airstrikes targeted weapons convoys crossing from Syria into Lebanon. Intelligence units tracked storage facilities and manufacturing sites. Assassination campaigns eliminated engineers and logistics officers involved in missile programs. The assumption was that even if a few missiles survived, they would be too risky to deploy because launching them would immediately reveal their location and invite retaliation. That assumption was built on the belief that Hezbollah valued its infrastructure more than it valued a single strike on Tel Aviv. The belief was wrong. The missile that hit Rothschild Boulevard was launched from a site that had been prepared months in advance and used exactly once. After the launch, the site was abandoned. No retaliation strike was possible because there was nothing left to strike. The bunker was empty. The crew was gone, and the missile had already done its job. This is what military analysts call a single-use asset. You build it, hide it, and deploy it once for maximum strategic effect. The cost is high. The return is higher. Because the value is not in the physical damage. The value is in the message. Stay with me because this is not the first time a single missile has rewritten the rules. In 1991, a single Iraqi Scud missile struck a U.S. Army barracks in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, killing 28 soldiers and wounding 99. The Scud was an obsolete Soviet-era weapon with terrible accuracy and a crude warhead. But it got through. Patriot missile batteries were deployed across the region. They failed to intercept. The impact shattered the perception that American forces in the Gulf were untouchable. In 2006, Hezbollah launched a C-802 anti-ship missile at the INS Hanit, an Israeli Navy corvette patrolling off the coast of Beirut. The missile struck the ship's helicopter deck, killing 4 sailors. Israeli naval doctrine assumed Hezbollah did not possess advanced anti-ship missiles. The assumption was wrong. The strike forced a complete reassessment of naval operations in the eastern Mediterranean. And in 2019, a swarm of drones and cruise missiles struck the Abqaiq oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia, temporarily knocking out half of the kingdom's oil production capacity. Saudi air defenses never engaged. American Patriot batteries stationed nearby never fired. The facility was considered one of the most heavily defended industrial sites in the world. It was hit anyway. The pattern is consistent. A single successful strike against a supposedly invulnerable target does more strategic damage than 100 failed attempts. It forces the defender to question every assumption. It exposes vulnerabilities that were previously theoretical. And it shifts the psychological balance. Now, towards the end here, I want to show you what happened on the ground. The missile struck at 0347. Most residents were asleep. The impact detonated on contact, sending a shockwave through a 12-story residential building and across Rothschild Boulevard. Windows shattered for 3 blocks in every direction. The blast wave triggered car alarms, collapsed a section of facade on the building's south side, and ignited a small fire on the 3rd floor. Emergency response teams arrived within 4 minutes. Residents poured into the streets. Some ran toward the public shelter 2 blocks west. Others sheltered in stairwells. 14 people were injured, 11 from lacerations caused by flying glass, 2 from falls during the evacuation, 1 from blunt force trauma sustained when a section of exterior wall collapsed into the street. No fatalities were reported. But that is not the full picture. The warhead detonated 380 meters from an emergency shelter that was at 70% capacity. If the missile had struck 4 seconds earlier or 4 seconds later, the trajectory would have been different. The impact point would have been different, and the casualty count would have been different. That is not speculation. That is geometry. A ballistic missile does not steer in its terminal phase. It falls. Where it falls depends on when it was launched, how fast it was moving, and what the atmospheric conditions were at re-entry. 4 seconds is the margin between 14 injuries and 14 deaths. That margin is too small to be called security. That margin is luck. Here's the contradiction nobody wants to address. If a single Fateh 110 can penetrate Israeli air defenses and strike Tel Aviv, then the entire deterrence model collapses. Deterrence relies on the belief that retaliation will be swift, devastating, and certain. It relies on the belief that the cost of attacking is always higher than the benefit. But if the cost of launching a single missile is the loss of an empty bunker, and the benefit is a direct strike on the commercial heart of Israel, then the equation changes. Hezbollah now knows that launchers can be pre-positioned, concealed, and used once without significant risk. Iran knows that its missile designs work in combat and can evade interception. And every hostile actor in the region now has proof that Tel Aviv is not untouchable. The strategic consequences extend beyond the Middle East. American Patriot batteries deployed in Eastern Europe rely on the same engagement logic as Iron Dome and David's Sling. If those systems failed in Tel Aviv, they will fail in Warsaw, they will fail in Bucharest, and they will fail in Seoul. The assumption that advanced air defense can protect urban centers from ballistic missile strikes is being tested in real time. The test results are not good. So what does this mean? It means the era of absolute air defense is over. It means that no city, no matter how heavily defended, is immune to a determined adversary willing to sacrifice resources for a single high-value strike. And it means that the rules of urban warfare are being rewritten by actors who have studied every failure, every gap, and every assumption in modern defense systems. The missile that hit Tel Aviv was not a game changer because of its size or its payload. It was a game changer because it worked. It bypassed detection, it avoided interception, and it struck exactly where it was aimed. That is not luck, that is capability. And capability, once demonstrated, becomes doctrine. The question is not whether this will happen again. The question is where and when, and whether the next missile will carry a 220-pound warhead or something far worse. That is not a hypothetical scenario. That is a planning assumption. And planning assumptions shape policy, deployment, and response. The Tel Aviv strike was a proof of concept. The concept has been proven. What comes next is implementation at scale. That is not a war with an exit strategy. That is a war running on momentum. And momentum does not negotiate. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think air defense systems can be upgraded fast enough to counter evolving missile technology? Or has the balance already shifted too far toward the attacker? Let me know. Please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated. And click the video on the screen to see another. I will see you soon.